19th.
19th, thank you very much. June 19th, 2026, we are at the Juneteenth celebration at the African American Civil War Memorial. And this is Ken Rose. Do I have permission to film this interview?
Yes.
Can you state your name for the camera?
Patricia A. Tyson.
All right, Ms. Tyson. And what event, just give me a brief overview, what event are we at today?
We are at Juneteenth, that is celebrated on June 19th every year. It's a legal holiday.
And what are you doing here today? What are you contributing to what's event?
Today is a celebration of freedom. I have been with the African American Civil War Museum in the auxiliary group of the ladies, female reenactors of distinction, known as Freed. And for the last 20 or 21 years, we have taken seriously the women who supported the U.S. colored troops in the fight for freedom, that America might be all that she was designed to be or supposedly was called to be.
So how did you get started in this line of work?
Well, it's God has his timing. And since I hated history in school, and then after I was an adult, I did not pay any attention to history because it was dates and places, and it was very boring. However, I went to a school that was born after the Battle of Fort Stevens here in the Federal City, as it was named in that day. And we were given the history of the battle here in Washington, D.C. that took place there as children. So I knew about it. But when the history of the country uh, was revered and everything, I still was not interested. However, when my school building, which had been there in Northwest in the Ward 4, was threatened to be sold because it was no longer a DC public school system, that's when it got my attention. We received such an excellent education there as young people about the nation and what happened there, which happened to be during the Civil War, an African American community, that I felt that I wanted to do something but wasn't sure what. And so some of us who were alumni got together, formed an alumni association, and fought the decision to sell our school building. That's what brought me into concern for the Civil War. And in order to do that, we had to write an application for historic preservation. That meant that we had to study and know what the history was of that era. Why did they put a school there? What did it mean? Why was it called Military Road? It had an awful lot of meaning to it. That's what got me started into wanting to know more about the Civil War and in particular the Federal City.
So for this collective that you are a part of, I'm assuming that you're portraying a character from that time period. So what character are you playing?
Okay. I'm portraying the character of Hallie Quinn Brown. Now, Miss Brown was born in 1850, but she passed away in 1949. Miss Brown, and as I will tell you in character, my father was enslaved to a family or a mistress in Frederick, Maryland. And he was a very wise man, but he, being enslaved, what could he do? So he took it upon himself to work. The mistress of the plantation allowed him to work that uh, and to enjoy somewhat freedom. But there came a time when he decided to work and buy his freedom, and he did. He bought his freedom from this man, this lady, and then when he bought his freedom, he brought that of his brother and his father, and then they moved. Then he moved out of the area. He met up with my mother, who was enslaved in Virginia by a Revolutionary War officer. This officer eventually gave her her freedom. My parents went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where they worked on the Underground Railroad. My father worked in a hotel called the Monongahela Hotel, where they had an underground network of workers there who, when someone was being transferred from one plantation to another, if they had to stay overnight and come to Pittsburgh, they stayed in our hotel. And in that hotel, there was a network that snuck the enslaved person to the Quakers, and the Quakers in turn smuggled them on a train to Canada. So it was quite a history. I'm one of 6 children, and the war was coming down to not the end, but it was pretty much going on. My parents, well, I can't say that. It was really before the war a little bit. My parents decided to move to Canada. So we took the train and went to Canada. I grew up there. And when I came back, it was time for me to go to college, where I went to Wilberforce University in Wilberforce, Ohio. I became a teacher. I'm a teacher, an author, a public speaker, a community activist, and what was known in those days as a club woman. I worked with other women on projects to help train our people and to help our people assimilate into society so that they could make a living for themselves and not have to depend upon the government or be enslaved by, not really enslaved, but taken care of by someone else. And that's who I am, and that's who I portray. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have known what Miss Brown did.
So I'm just listening to like all the things that you are saying and the research that you had to have done to portray this character and even your interest in this history. So I'm wondering if your disdain for history earlier in your life, it was less so the acts of studying and the acts of researching, and more so what it is specifically that you are, doing the research on. Because I guess I'm somewhat like that too, where I don't enjoy certain aspects of history, but the aspects that I do, I definitely want to, learn more about. So do you feel that that is similar to your experience as well?
Once I started, once I had to write that application for this particular little school, the Military Road School in Washington, D.C., something of my heart kind of got involved in this, because I know there were enslaved people here in what was known as the Federal City. It was not known as Washington, D.C. When I found out about the enslavement that went on here until the emancipation, D.C. emancipation came about, I wanted to know if there was something I could do to tell the story. Not only that, but to make a difference in revering and respecting the people who were before us that did what they did. I'm just grateful and thankful that I've learned so much. And so that's the reason why I do this. And because the history today is being threatened and erased and told the wrong way, it's important now that we not shrink back and say, talk about it and say, well, it's a shame or any of those things. We have to get involved. And so that's what I'm doing, is getting involved before something happens that really we can't fight. Now it's an open door, and it's time for us to stand up.
Are there any other lessons that you might have learned from this character specifically that you have in your life?
Well, yes, Miss Brown, as I said, was a club woman. And in those days, in order to get things done, you formed a club and the women worked together on issues. So therefore, it's taught me a little bit about the fact that you have to work with people. Um, you have to work together. Pride should not be in the way because that can ruin a project. But you give your heart and your talent to helping whatever you can, because our next generation needs to know what it's all about. And now we're in a world of technology where there's so much going on, you don't have to think, it thinks for you. And some of the things it might think for you might not be correct. So you have to know the truth. And you can't depend upon society to teach you. You've got to thank God for a nation that keeps its documents. Thank God.
Do you feel that there's a way to incorporate technology into the line of work that you're doing, or the messages that you're trying to push?
Oh, yeah, I think that it's wonderful to have technology. It's the best thing in the world. But it all depends upon who feeds it. And that's what we've got to be very careful of. Thank God there are books still around and we can read them and digitalize them. But who's feeding the machinery? What side do they want to bring us out on? What do they want to accomplish? And in order to accomplish what they particularly may want to, the Humanities Council is a wonderful organization because people are able to work truthfully on a project without having to compromise their standards.
Now, the last question that I do have for you, with Juneteenth being a relatively new holiday, newly recognized holiday here in this country, how do you feel that its introduction has, how do you feel that your line of work has changed in some way due to the introduction of Juneteenth? Whether you see more engagement or...
Well, I wouldn't say Juneteenth. You know, Juneteenth, I'm with the African American Civil War Museum, and one of the curators here and historians, he wanted us to know what Juneteenth was really about. And he felt as though um, the true story was not being told. And then when I went online and I found some testimonies of people who had been enslaved in what they were saying, I found that Juneteenth is a celebration of history, and that as we today read the names of 6,000 soldiers who were stationed in Texas during that period, they knew that President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And our people have always been a very curious people. I can't help but think, as the historians said, the people knew that they were free, but they were not free enough to exercise their freedom. And as such, they were still forbidden to do what they needed to do. It wasn't until the government showed up and said and read the edict that gave them the opportunity, and the crooks, so to speak, fled to Mexico and left town. So then they were able to really enjoy their freedom. They knew they had been freed, but they couldn't exercise their freedom before then.
And that's the beauty of Juneteenth, acknowledging the
Yes,
history and the stories that
that's
are
right.
lost,
That's right.
speaking to the significance of the work that you're doing,
Amen.
exalting those
Yes.
lost memories, those lost stories, those
Yes.
lost narratives
Yes.
that do have existed throughout the
Yes.
country.
Yes.
But do you have any last remarks that you want to speak to? Maybe telling the audience where they can find you, where they can see you, just as Miss Brown.
Sure. We're here today at Vermont Avenue and Florida Avenue at the subway stop. We're in front of this stop. When you come up out of the subway, there's a statue that memorializes the history and the courage of 209,145 U.S. colored troops in the Civil War, and their white officers. I have to say that being part of the African American Civil War Museum just across the street, we have this ladies group, and each of us portrays a woman of the era who was either born before, during, or after. You can go online and to the site for the African American Civil War Museum and find a reference to us there. You can call the museum and ask for a contact person who could contact our organization, where the female reenactors are, the ladies are free, and we will come free of charge to anyone that would like to have us speak at their school, church, government agency, social organization, whatever. We are available, and we do not charge. None of us get paid. We're all volunteers, and we would love to appear and portray for them a lady of the Civil War. I'm just the coordinator for the group. We are not organized with a president and a vice president and all those officers. We wanted to remain as volunteers that work together. And we would be delighted to come and share the testimony of someone who lived during that period.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here.
All right. Thank you so much, too.